Oh, hey. What's up? How you guys doing? I didn't see you there. This sucks. This already sucks. You guys have watched all these, and this one sucks. But the chapters are good. I think I'm going to switch from duct tape to chocolate frosted sherbet. That's a sexy sounding strain. Open me, you will. Open we'd attack you with. I love that noise. Fucking Frank Oz, you fucking rule. Godspeed, Christian soldier, or whatever. Oh man, what if there's an animator's heaven? I want to go there. I still want to animate. I haven't animated since college, and it's like my favorite art form, probably. I want to do Macbeth someday. Okay. So, last week we talked about my chapter naming conventions, and I have decided to not pay attention to my Evernote chapter titles because I was just creating those for my own organization, but I forgot to leave the part that I should be saying. Doesn't matter. Here we go. Chapter 18. Joran. Joran didn't know what to think. First, the worst killer in the galaxy wastes dozens of civilians when he only needed to kill one. Then the Ascendancy starts a new war for the outer reaches. Then some flounced up wizard prince shows up with some magical knick-knack, and a fucking necromancer might be stalking them. Unbelievable. Barlow, a word? Ayanna was close. She had a gift for walking quickly without making a lot of noise. It would be annoying if she wasn't so damn calming and beautiful. He gulped and turned. Yes, your mercy. He put all the gruffness he could muster into his voice. Given their relative heights, she looked up at him, a curious look on her face. What are you thinking, priestess? He asked with what he hoped was an air of cool nonchalance. What's up? Come. She patted a chair on the side of the bridge, taking the seat next to it. Sit. Joran slid into the seat, setting the butt of his rifle against his boot. He felt her warmth radiating across the inch or so of space that separated her hip from his. He looked straight ahead, adopting a grizzled, aloof, heavy-lidded gaze. Ayanna also looked forward. Her breathing seemed labored. How much do you know about necromancy, Mr. Barlow? Joran almost smiled, then didn't. Not a lot, your mercy. She moved her hand over his, clasped her fingers around his wrist, and leaned in. He forced himself to act casual, to not look down, to observe the subtle curves beneath her pure white robes. Mr. Barlow, I have seen many bad things. Death, disease, the profound mental and physical effects of abuse, etc. But never have I seen a creature offer forth insects instead of effluvium. This is a magic I have no familiarity with. I'd be willing to bet that no one aboard this ship has has had anywhere near as much contact with the unexplained as you, surely. Joran cursed his old body, his weathered skin, his misspent youth, his lonely bed. He'd known a strong young woman like Ayanna once before. He had even loved her. Your mercy. Ayanna lifted a finger. Please, call me Ayanna. Joran shook his head slightly. Your mercy, I'd be more comfortable addressing you honorifically, if you don't mind. She stared, confused. He couldn't grasp how she could be so obtuse. Surely every other man she met had grappled with the same sort of feelings. For such a powerful priestess, she ain't got much understanding of human interactions. Mr. Barlow, do you, a word caught in her throat, have feelings? Joran jumped to his feet and grabbed his rifle at the heavy spot between the grip and the barrel. Ayanna slid back as he rose, clearly stunned by his sudden movement. Across the bridge, Sophra seemed to gasp without making a sound. Huh, that's a neat trick. Joran ran to the small room at the back of the bridge and shoved in the door. Once there, he began tearing apart the communications array. Faline ran up. What the fuck are you doing? Joran threw some random piece of gear over his shoulder and kept tinkering. Faline looked over at Ayanna, her shoulders touching her ears and adopting a look of confused questioning. Ayanna shook her head and shrugged. Joran, the lady is concerned. What are you doing? I'm bypassing the communication system. We need to reach the Horus. Why? Joran stared into the dark corner of the comm closet. The necromancer. He's gone over. Sophra stood up straight, his eyes wide with horror. Yo, I love the twist. Like, you think he's just frightened of this young lady, like asking him if he has feelings. No, it's because he had an insight and it was related to some shit that was said. I love this. Did I mention this is a good book? Whatever. Fuck you guys. Okay. Chapter 19. Dell. Captain Thraxus paced nervously around the bridge, pausing every 30 seconds to lean down and tap the glass of the passive sensor display. Each time he did, Numerius would sigh and lean out of the way, the tips of his bluish-green locks lighting up briefly in irritation. A few times they thought they'd made contact, but they were false alarms. Whatever force had silenced the communications on the enemy ship prior to capture hadn't yet lifted. It had to be magical. Any technical cause would surely have been solved by any one of the geniuses on the ship in under 20 minutes. It had been almost 30. Thraxus was convinced they were safe. The closing of the safety seal had gone perfectly. Following that, he trusted Faline to take on any attacker. What he couldn't fathom, though, was how they had heard nothing from any of them. The intercom whistled and bleeped. Dell. The captain tapped the screen. It was Joss. Captain, I'm picking up a strange reading from the rear of the ship. Strange? How so? Well, it looks like something is moving in the organic waste section of the sanitation core. Numerius and Thraxus stared at each other, eyebrows akimbo. Go. I'll meet you there. He slapped Numerius on the shoulder. Nim, the bridge is yours. Numerius nodded sharply. Yes, Captain. Chapter 20. Grundle. Grundle had spent the time waiting on the massive chair between he and Sophris's bunks, swigging from a small bottle of spirits. He wasn't a drinker, generally. It took enormous amounts of alcohol to intoxicate the average-sized Vorak, and Grundle was anything but average. But Numerius had developed a sophisticated distillation process to create intensely potent spirits using strands of his own discarded hairs and pulses of ultraviolet light from a power cell. After 2 hits, Grundle's thoughts had begun to swirl. Gods, how he loved this woman. She had saved so many, saved him despite his complete disregard for his own safety. She was a hero in the truest sense of the word, whereas he was little more than an angry beast, chained inside an iron cage, waiting for his chance to rage once again. He was a walking caricature of his species. All his skill, all his talent, nothing mattered in the least to anyone because his enormous, monstrous shape was all they noticed. Sure, his regular customers respected his work, but they never tried to get to know him as a person. Eano was the first Lunari he could think of that saw him as anything other than an obstacle to be avoided or a provider of repairs. And now, with his face and body all over the network, he'd never be seen as anything else. Intergalactic travel might be his only route to anonymity ever again. He couldn't bear the thought of Ayana not returning to the base and resuming her important work. All because of him and his rage. He felt hopelessly impotent, a pointless waste of flesh, taking up valuable space on the ship. He took another drink. Good douche! The cabin shook. Something large and heavy had just hurtled into a wall, somewhere between his room and the engine room. Grundle stumbled to his feet, immediately regretting his decision to drink. The cane, which had been resting comfortably against his bunk, had skittered across the room and lodged beside the door. Grundle hurled himself up from the chair and lunged forward. The noises, whatever they were, continued to hammer. It sounded like fighting, but he couldn't understand why there would be fighting on the ship. He barely reached the door before he heard the telltale zwack of a powered pistol smacking into flesh. Gods, what is happening? He murmured aloud, wincing at the pain arcing up and down his right side. The ship's intercom sparked into life. All hands! Solid waste! There's some sort of monster! It was the captain, clearly short of breath and frazzled. Grundle hoisted up his cane and smashed a fist somewhat gently into the keypad. The cabin door slid open with a faint swish. The cabin door slid open with a faint swish. What do you think? One more? Two more? All right. There! Sophris was pointing at a corner of the communications patch bay. Oh, this is chapter 21. There. Celine was pointing at a corner of the communications patch bay. Joran hurriedly shoved a plug into the slot and started following the cord back to its match on the other side of the mass of wires. Celine had had the clever notion of using psychometrics to follow the path of whoever had altered the comm system's wiring to prevent inter-vessel communication. He touched several manuals until he found the line of contact between them and the reconnections that would undo what had been done. The task was nearly complete. If Joran was correct, they'd have contact with the Horus in mere seconds. Joran spit on his hands and rubbed them together. He glanced up at the others, then flipped on the communications array. Boop. Hailing all vessels, this is the Horus. We have engaged with 2 belligerent vessels in the Oberrim quadrant, requesting information as to their owners. The vessels are... It was the automated message Captain Thraxus had recorded after the battle, repeating at short intervals. Feline clapped hard. Fuck yeah! She smacked Sophris on the shoulder and grabbed the captain's comm link. Captain! Captain! We secured the ship! Over! Nothing. No response. Captain! Feline here. We've secured the ship. We're unhurt. Over. Nothing. Feline slammed the mic down onto the screen. Fuck! Fuck! She kicked the enemy captain's corpse, sending him clattering to the floor in a plume of maggots. Ayanna jumped back. Joran got up and moved over towards Feline. Feline, it's fine. They'll contact us. Give it a minute. Ayanna had a very ugly feeling. Sophris was facing her, his features drawn tight with worry. His eyes seemed to scan hers for guidance. What guidance could she provide? Necromancy was the stuff of fiction, as far as she knew. Who knew what such a madman was capable of? Could he or she or they have reached the Horus? Could they even now be ravaging the crew and or turning them into zombies? God us be praised. Yup. That's right. Chapter 21. Grundle tromped down the hallway as quickly as he could, pain attacking him in waves. His vision blurred, his teeth grinding audibly with each pounding step. He heard shouts and gunshots ringing out along the corridor. 3 voices, Nim, Joss, and the captain. If whatever they were fighting was saying anything, it wasn't saying it very loud. Grundle burst into the mess hall. He winced as Joss Ramsdell flew through the air. The walls shook as the little engineer connected with the refrigerator. It took a second for Grundle to understand what he was seeing. As best he could tell, some unseen force was using bones and other organic material to form a sort of corporeal shape in the center of the hall. Grundle looked over at Joss, slumped unconscious against the fridge. His suit was pierced in multiple places by tiny bones, and his face mask was shattered. He seemed to still be breathing, thank the gods. A pistol shot grazed Grundle's forehead. He went sprawling to the deck. Captain Thraxus was pinned down behind a makeshift barricade of couches and tables, wildly popping off shots at the mysterious enemy. Vorok! What is this thing? Numerius was shouting at him from beneath a heavy desk near the entrance to the showers. The navigator's face was bloody, and his voice was frantic. His headset lay 30 feet across the room, its tiny blue light flickering. Grundle could hear someone on the other end shouting to make contact. In the center of the room, the monster roiled and shook, pushing things around and generally menacing the group. It had 2 long tendrils of garbage, mostly bones, that it was using to swirl around the air near the captain. As Grundle took in the whole scene, a face of sorts formed in the mass and turned to observe him. Grundle had no ability to comprehend what he was seeing. This wasn't just an invisible monster. This thing had a mind, sentience. It seemed to dig into his soul and accuse him of being unworthy of life. He felt an intense wave of fear and self revulsion. But perhaps because he'd lived most of his life in fear and self revulsion, he was more or less unaffected. Mostly, he was just confused. He turned back to Nemirius. They're contacting us! Activate the intercom! Numerius stared, as if Grundle had suddenly grown 3 heads and started speaking backwards in a made-up language. No! Grundle's fury swept across him like flames across a dry field. The pain, whatever it had been, was a memory. The creature stared. If it understood humanity at all, it might have been wondering what was about to happen. A long stream of processed turkey guts dribbled from its mouth into a disgusting pool on the floor. A long, mournful wail began to flow from its mass, accompanied by tendrils of stomach-turning gore. Grundle! What the hell is this thing? The captain was apoplectic. Eyes wild, hair a mess, elegant suit festooned with stinky garbage. Grundle felt his muscles twitch and loosen. The time for talking was over. His center of gravity shifted slightly as he prepared for the attack. This is why I am here. The mission requires it. I will not fail. By the goddess, I will defeat you. Fuck yes. Grundle is a boss. Taking on evil. So that's that. Grundle gonna kick some more ass, but on the undead this time. So stay tuned for next time. I call those chapters Dance with Death. So that's fun. Anyway, peace.